Welcome to Built for This. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. My podcast features captivating conversations with intriguing people who have found purpose in their lives through their career, family, or life experiences, and just why they were built for this. Through the stories that you will hear, I trust that you will be inspired and encouraged to find just what you were built for. So let's get started. And welcome again into the studio. And boy, it's a great privilege and a thrill to have a longtime friend on the show today. You know him as being with the University of North Texas for a long time, now at the Denton Chamber of Commerce. My friend, Hank Dickenson. Hank, thanks so much for doing the show.
Well, your tease is so good. I'm not sure I'm that intriguing. So hopefully I'm filling in some blocks for you. But no, it's an honor. Thank you. You've interviewed some fascinating people, so I'm sorry to let you down today.
No, you're gonna be great. Have the greatest of hope for this. Well, let's talk a little bit first of all. I mean, everybody knows that. Well, you really came right after I left the University of North Texas way back in 1995, and we're going to talk about the 30 plus years there. But how did you get attracted to move from in Virginia at the time to come here to the Lone Star State, and you never went away?
Yeah, without making it too long a story, I grew up in the Midwest in Kansas City, and my dad worked in the cattle business.
Yeah.
So he dealt with a lot of Texans, obviously, and always told me, the best state is Texas. So if you never get to Texas, you ought to do that. That was Dad's advice all the time. And so when the opportunity came, I was working at Virginia Commonwealth University, and the gentleman that I had worked for, Tim Fitzpatrick, had left VCU to work at the Southwest Conference. And when the Southwest Conference dissolved, he was out here and looking for another job and landed at the University of North Texas. So Tim called me in middle of 1995 and said, "Hey, you want a job in Texas? You want to come get some football experience?" And I said, "Well, where is it?" And he said, "It's University of North Texas, just north of Dallas and Fort Worth." And I said, "Well, I've heard of North Texas State, but I've never heard of North Texas."
Close enough.
"Yeah, we'll make all that work. It's the same place." And so I came out and interviewed, and Tim was a guy I had worked for before, and looked like a great situation. And yes, the availability was because you were leaving. Mm-hmm. And you and I met, I think, maybe my first day, your last day, and handed off the keys. And we talked in that old office in the building that Hayden Fry had built, and that was the beginning of it. So very thankful for Tim bringing me out here.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the beginnings of North Texas. But you like you said, you were in Kansas, and then you get the Virginia Commonwealth. But what attracted you to sports communications and being in the field of broadcasting and being around college athletics?
I think a lot of it was just growing up and really consuming sports on the radio, like a lot of people our age, yeah. Brian, that was something we did. And to understand that there was a craft to it and that there was a job possibility to do it was really, to me, in junior high and high school, fascinating. And when I got to the University of Kansas, I was made aware that there was a sports broadcasting class, much like Bill Mercer was doing at North Texas. And Tom Hedrick was the gentleman that taught that class, and he had been a voice of the Jayhawks, a voice of the Chiefs. He was very comparable to what Bill would be to North Texas people, just a made man in the business and a good teacher. And so, I fell in love with the opportunity to broadcast games at any level at Kansas, and I was student station manager of the radio station KJHK. But as I was doing all that, then I also realized there's layers to this. There's jobs in college athletics that allow you to be around these athletes and these coaches. And so I was kind of fascinated with sports information at the time. And so that was really how it all kind of happened, was just I realized I don't know how it's going to play out. I want to be close to this fire, and frankly, kind of wanted to be at one place for a long time. That was sort of what I wanted. I mean, there's always opportunity to move around, but it's kind of nice to be affiliated with a place.
And you mentioned that you come to Denton in 1995. That's when I was heading off on a wild trip to Martha's Vineyard for 1 year, and then back into sports information. But you come to North Texas at a time where the program at that time was moving from the old 1AA to back up to Division I, and expansion of the program was all on the forefront. What was that like, stepping in, coming from VCU to a program that was trying to build a football program and beef up things?
Well, first of all, I think you and a lot of the people that were in that department at the time did a wonderful job of that transition. A lot of new fans don't realize how hard it was to get a whole community behind the effort. And you might remember better than I, but Fouts had to be expanded to 30,000 because that was the rule back then. If you were going to be Division I, you had to have a capacity stadium of 30,000 or more. That is a lot of work back in 1993, 94 to make that happen. And then you've got to sell tickets and you've got to be able to average. And it was a phenomenal effort. I came in on the tail end of it, so all I can do is say kudos to the folks that were here before. But the transition was interesting. Looking back on it, I think there were tactical mistakes in terms of scheduling, but fundraising back then leaned heavily on guarantee games in football. And so if you look at some of those early schedules, those poor coaches and kids, they were running through it.
That 73-6 trip to Nebraska was brutal.
Well, and those were the games that were played back then. It was a different time with a different budget and, frankly, a little bit different administratively managed athletic program. I think it's come a long ways in terms of the university understanding that athletics absolutely is the front porch. And you look at what's going on right now and what has been going on with men's basketball, now football, as we record this, 21st ranked. It's a pretty good looking front porch.
Yeah. You talked about that you'd like to get to a place at that time that you could stay a long time. And you and I both know in the sports information world, it tends to be move around. You stay 4 or 5 years. You look at it, they get another program. What was it that kind of kept you going here for 30 plus years, and before you moved on to what we're going to talk about? You do now.
The best thing about North Texas in the whole time I've been here is it's never stopped growing, and it's grown, I think, in the right way. It's grown in terms of adding curriculum. It's grown in terms of the campus adding really incredible structures. You just think about the old view from Fouts Field, which is now a parking lot, and how much it's changed in just the time I've been here. You grew up here, you can really see it. But I love the way that North Texas has evolved. It hasn't always been fast when you count the hours on your clock during the day. But when you look at it, phenomenal growth to be close at 50,000 students now. And so I always felt like we were never going to touch the ceiling. There was always going to be opportunity. And I feel that way today. When I retired from athletic administration, college athletics was pivoting and it didn't appeal to me as much, but being affiliated with the university has never lost its appeal.
Now, on the broadcasting side, which you're still involved with at UNT, I mean, you've worked with a couple of guys or several guys that are, North Texas legends from the Bill Mercer School, George Dunham, and now Dave Barnett is involved. So how fun has that been to be able to work with a couple of guys from North Texas? And then you've seen a lot of games in every sport, but to be able to still be involved and being part of that.
True blessing. And 20 years on the air with George, we became great friends, family friends. Our families are linked together. One of the most generous, gracious people ever. If you don't love George, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And then 10 years now with Dave. And, George and I used to sit there and say, if there's really the best North Texas announcer, it's got to be Dave Barnett, right? And we're like, it's Dave Barnett. And now to work with Dave for 10 years. And Dave, by the way, is absolutely at the top of his game. I would say this, though. I don't think George gets nearly enough credit for his play-by-play ability. And you and I have both been in the booth with him. He's so popular as the gentle muser in the morning, and he has so many talents. I mean, he's a songwriter, he's a musician, he's an on-air host, but he's a darn good play-by-play guy, and I really enjoyed working with him.
And his call of the 1990 whatever it was 3 or 4 McNeese State game. See you later, McNeese State. Still lives. Still hear that clip.
Yeah, and do you believe in the Mean Green?
Believe in the Mean Green?
Upset Texas Tech.
Sure.
No, he had a real good talent for the moment,
yes,
and it still does. I heard him do an Argyle game not long ago, so he's still got the chops.
You mentioned Bill Mercer at the start. I mean, Bill mentored me way back in the dark ages when they were just getting the program started there under him, and so many other broadcasters who have come through him. What impact did the late great Bill Mercer, what did he have an impact on you?
Well,
through there?
Quite a bit when I look back on it. When Bill decided to retire from teaching the class that he produced so many people like yourself, he asked me if I had time to go to lunch. And I thought, well, this is just his way of saying goodbye and leaving campus. Sure. So we went and met at Roosters. And about halfway through the lunch, he pulls out this big file that he'd been carrying with him, and he plops it on the table. And he says, "I want you to teach a class." And I said, "Well, Bill, first of all,
that's how you said it.
I'm not a teacher." "Well, but you can be." And I said, "Yeah, but Bill, I don't know that I even have time to do it. And my goodness, there's so many North Texas people that learn from you. Why wouldn't you? You're on campus. You know these people. I want you to teach it. I feel good about you being able to kind of keep it going." And I said, "Bill, honestly, I've talked to my wife. I don't know that I have time for another evening duty." And then he told me what it paid, and I said, "Yeah, one night a week, sure, we can do that." It's not a huge stipend. I couldn't say no to him, and it's turned out to be an enormous opportunity for me to keep something he started alive. I am not nearly the teacher or the professor in that regard that Bill was. I do think we've been able to help some kids get that first job, get that first internship, get exposed to a lot of things. But it's different now than when Bill taught it, because Bill taught people that grew up listening to radio and wanting to do radio. The kids I have now, sadly, that's not a way they grew up consuming sports. They held it in their hands, looking at it on that phone. And so they're all very production laden. Certain ones are very good at the talent portion, but it's a lot more video editing, content creation focused. And Bill finally kind of came around to see that. You're not making them go to the stadiums and do play-by-play. I said, I tried it for about 5 or 6 semesters, but it wasn't the same as what you were able to do. But still, if it wasn't for Bill, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And if it wasn't for people like you and George and Dave, I wouldn't have built up the kind of relationships that I have now in the industry that I can bring really quality men and women from the broadcast field to talk to these kids.
And how important, I mean, it seems like almost that is a tribute to Bill to keep this class going. And like you said, there's had to be a metamorphosis and changing of how you approach it. But what are you hoping to be able to send out into the community from these kids and these students, I call them kids, these students, that would carry on that legacy for Bill to accomplish? I
think it's Bill's legacy for sure, Brian. I think it's North Texas' legacy.
Absolutely.
We're lucky that the athletic department still allows me great access to the stadium. So I teach the course in the Bill Mercer press room, and there's a nice, attractive picture of Bill with his headsets and that's at the back of the wall. And I do that for a reason, because so many of the people that do come, and you've come and spoke to the class, need to get you back in the spring, they can actually talk about having learned from Bill. And I want these young men and women that are coming through to realize this has been in place for a long time. And so as you look around, not just the Metroplex, the nation, there are North Texas products out there.
Yeah.
And especially in a top 5 market that DFW is, to have the connections to North Texas, you need to realize you've got that. You're now attending North Texas. You're interested in sports broadcasting. These people are out there for you. You've got to be good at what you do, but they're out there for you, and they want you to succeed. But remember, it all started with Bill. It's easy for me to introduce someone to Brian Briscoe or, Brad Sham or whoever that I've got a list with, but really the whole lineage started with Bill. And if you look at the people, and we've named a few of them, it's really impressive. I want our students now to understand that.
And that group of people is affectionately known as the Mercer Mafia that he's been able to produce over the years. And you went to a great broadcast school, a great communication school like Kansas, and there's a few others around, Syracuse and some others that have produced. But because you've been at the university for so long and taught this class for so long, how do you, has it found its place in the marketplace that, boy, if I want to be in broadcasting, or particularly sports broadcasting, maybe this UNT program I really need to look at that.
Absolutely. And I'll ask the kids, the very first class, why did you come to North Texas? Where'd you go to high school? I want to know. And why North Texas? And so some of it gets down to affordability or close to home.
Yeah.
But by and large, those kids all say, we know this is where we can get our chops and learn the broadcast industry. I don't feel like KNTU is as great a tool today as it was when you were coming up, but North Texas Television absolutely is. And Mean Green Productions. The athletic department put over $2 million into production equipment. And so once you began getting these linear opportunities and ESPN Plus, these kids have a wonderful opportunity to learn at ground zero with really good equipment how to produce games. And that could be learning how to be a producer, an engineer, camera, any kind of editing, graphics, replay. So there's a lot of opportunity. And I think while TCU and SMU are fantastic schools, we've got the edge on them. If you come to North Texas and you want to get your hands dirty in broadcasting, you can do it.
You mentioned Mean Green's sports productions, and you're right. Back in the day when I was at the university as a student, KNTU was pretty wide open. If you wanted to go out and broadcast a game, you go do it. And we carried all the high school games and North Texas games. So a little bit different, as you mentioned now. But with those kind of assets that are available for the students now, to be able to work on an ESPN Plus telecast.
Right, that's on their resume, ESPN, and it's real.
Right. And as you mentioned earlier, that you're not just teaching behind the microphone like we are right now, but there's so much production availabilities. Is that a message that you're really trying to pound home? That look, you don't have to be an announcer, you don't have to be a broadcaster. You can work in this industry through the North Texas assets that you have here and do a lot of different things.
Well, absolutely. And in the time that I've taught the class and was still working in the department, a lot of these people came back and we hired them. I can think of just, if I start naming a few, I'll leave some out. So that's always dangerous. But a guy named Matt Sizik, who worked both for Conference USA and the American Conference, then worked for the Mavericks. Now he's on his own private project. Incredibly talented. And when I can bring Matt back and he can talk about all the things he did as a student, then I think what they're learning is take your shots while you're here. Make a few mistakes. It's not going to be the end of the world because this is your laboratory. And if it's broadcasting, make it the 16 sports that North Texas offers and come figure this out and start early. Start as a freshman, a sophomore. Don't wait until you're junior, senior. But Matt Sizik's a great example. He was a board operator for Mean Green basketball broadcasts. He understood how to do that. So he could go to work for the Ticket or ESPN Sports or whatever right away. Then he has this amazing talent at production and editing. So as the creative content boom sort of hit in athletics, he was on the front edge of that. And basically, what is that? Well, that's what all these kids are looking at on their phones. They're looking at little snippets and small productions that have an impact on the brand and the recruiting and everything that goes on in athletics. So he's just one of those examples of, he wasn't one of the Mercer Mafias, he was one of the Dickenson dogs, but I can't take any credit for his talents, but he was a kid that came through all that, that's now a young man raising a family that I would point to any time about this is what it can look like right now. He's just one example.
Let me ask you about, and you're still, like we said, you're still on the Mean Greens broadcast team. So working at the university all this time, around Bill while he was still at the university and teaching his class, you're in a teaching role, but what have you learned about yourself as a broadcaster, or how have you improved or developed or taken your broadcasting to the next stage, maybe even by accident, by teaching the class or just being around Bill and his principles that he taught?
Well, and of course, he had great principles that'll never, ever go out of style for radio play-by-play. Right. Everything that he cemented in people's minds about how to do a broadcast, there's some takeaways that everyone brings up, and you may remember this. Bill's number one do not use word was gets.
Yes.
Because gets is a lazy action verb. And so if you're not a big sports fan, you may not get it, but substitute gets every time for an action verb. You don't passing the ball, Hank gets it to Brian. No, Hank bounced it, Hank looped it, Hank lasered it, Hank threw it, but he didn't get it because gets is a lazy word. So the use of action verbs, I think, is really, really important. And it sounds simple. So much of radio is simple. Don't look past it. Have a really active vocabulary because you're invariably going to say the same thing 1,000 times during a season, and you got to come up with different ways to do it. So I think I've gotten better at that. A lot of it's just listening to people who I like on the radio. And then the other thing is just the simple things are so important. If you can get good at resets, time and score, the second someone tunes a game in, they don't care if it's Hank and Brian. They want to know
what's the score, how much time is left.
Yeah. And I always tell the students, that sounds boring. Do it as much as you can because you never can do it enough. And if you're good at that, you may mess up who caught the ball. You may mess up who made the tackle. You'll move on from that. But if the listener doesn't know time and score, you're not a good announcer.
No.
So simple things I think have made me hopefully better. And then working with the likes of Dunham and Barnett on the few times where I get a chance to do play-by-play, I borrow a lot from their styles.
Yeah. All right. 30-something years. And like you said,
it shows, right?
No, well, it shows well. And you mentioned you'd probably want to go somewhere and stay a long time, and maybe did you think you would retire there? That was your last stop? Or did it just come to a time where you think I'm looking for another opportunity, and then along comes, we'll talk about the Chamber of Commerce?
I got involved in a couple of AD opportunities, and that was fun to try to think about maybe being in charge of an entire department. But my wife and I would always do just the pros and cons list. If it got down to where this is a possibility, well, okay, where does this place and this school have pluses that were more than North Texas? And we never really ever found a place that we felt like it was worth uprooting the kids.
Yeah.
My wife had a job she loved. We loved Denton. And it was just, I don't know, at some point it was like, let's not chase anything else. Let's try to do the best job we can here. And would have loved to have gotten in the mix on AD opportunities here, but that never panned out. So, when I retired, I had to ask myself, what do you really love? And what I really love is the broadcasting and being a part of the university in that. So I didn't want to see that go away. And luckily they wanted to keep me around in that regard. But I do love North Texas. I love what it's meant to me and what it's done for my family. And very excited when things are going good. But I also know when things aren't going that great, just, hold the faith. It's college athletics. Everything kind of comes around.
And I should have mentioned that, you weren't just showing up to broadcast the games. I mean, you were deputy athletics director. So along with that comes, as you were kind of talking about, a lot of responsibility. You're focusing on across the whole athletics department, things, issues, sponsorships, marketing, people. So I'm sure the toll or the burden or the responsibility is heavy. It's not just, hey, let's just show up. Thank goodness we're at a game now. I can broadcast it.
Well, and you know this because you've walked in these shoes. The college athletic administrator lifestyle is pretty nonstop, and
the calendar never ends.
It never ends. And I think the only time I really was able to take sort of a deep breath from all that was when the pandemic hit. And kind of looked around and said, so this is what it's like when you don't have, 2 games on Saturday and a game on Thursday and a holiday game. And because it's evenings, it's weekends, and it's kind of nonstop. I think anyone that gets in the field, if they are going to have a spouse, they have to have that discussion early on. My wife was a college basketball player and a college basketball coach, and so
she knew this.
She knew, and very, very patient. But yeah, the pandemic allowed me just a little bit of time to say, okay, I've done this for a long time. Mm-hmm. I am at a point where I could retire and take my pension. That doesn't mean I can be done. I still need to make money. I still need to go do something. But I was able to kind of walk out on my own accord, which I'm very, very thankful for. And certainly didn't want to burn any bridges with anyone that was there. Wanted to make sure I, would be someone they would call if they needed anything. And so I still do some part-time work. And then I'm a Learfield employee when I announce.
Yeah.
But it is nice to walk into that stadium and not have to worry about all the other things going on. And God bless them all, dealing with the NILs and the transfer portal. I'm frankly glad I don't have to deal with that.
Well, and then along comes another opportunity, which I think, if I can use the term, you're certainly built for. The Chamber of Commerce approaches you, and you're obviously through the university very well connected to businesses and people here. What attracted you to that? Like you said, knowing that you probably wanted to find something to do, maybe. But what was it about joining on with the Denton Chamber of Commerce and do what you do?
So the chamber was really, really important to me as a volunteer in my time, and I served on the chamber board. I served 1 year as a board chair, which is crazy to think. And when you go through that process, you really give about a decade of your life to the chamber as a volunteer. But for me, the chamber brought me a lot of business. And of course, as you know, we were trying to sell sponsorships, and everything that went on in terms of advertising in the department at the time ran through my supervision. I had some great assistants, so it wasn't just me doing it alone. But the chamber was incremental. Now, certainly you want to go out and get some major corporate sponsors that maybe are Dallas-based or national. But the core of the people that are going to jump on board and spend money on signage or radio advertising or back in the day, game programs and that stuff, they're local, they're local. And so the chamber allowed me to really meet those people, made some of the best friends of my life through chamber affiliation. So, I was coming off the board for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, now Discover Denton, and this was as the pandemic was beginning to wind down. And the then chamber president called me and said, "Hey, you want to get coffee? Want to thank you for being on this board. I know you're rolling off." And I said, "Sure, I'd love to get coffee." So we went and got coffee, and we're just sitting outside over at Zira's. And she said, "If we can never get out of this pandemic, I got to hire a membership business development person. We're purging membership because the chamber is only good when you can get people together.
Yeah.
And the pandemic didn't allow." So anyway, she's talking about that position, and I said, "Well, what's that look like? What's that? How is that going to pay?" And she said, "Well, it's a pretty small base salary, but I think pretty good commissions." And I looked at what she had written down. I said, "Well, move that there and move that there, and I'll take it." She said, "Really?" And I said, "I'd love to. I love the chamber, and if you'd give me the freedom to go out there and just try to recruit members and sponsors, I'd love it." And so we got the deal done, and I took a month off, as you're supposed to, from university before I could come back and do any part-time work, and then jumped in with the chamber. And it's really been a great experience. It's challenging. It's busy. It's not hard, or I wouldn't be any good at it, but it's busy, and so I like the fact that I can be out there talking to people and trying to get people involved. And I feel like it worked for me, so I have no problem selling it to you. And if you say no, we move on and we go find somebody else.
I had one of our viewers of the podcast says during the podcast, be sure and remind us who you're visiting with. So this Hank Dickenson. We're visiting with the Denton Chamber of Commerce and formerly University of North Texas membership and development is what you do with the chamber. At this stage of your life, though, what's the challenge? You don't necessarily have to reinvent yourself very much, but a refocus, a reshifting of what you want to do. You've come from like you mentioned a minute ago, a very hectic schedule of athletics throughout your year after year, but at this stage of life, when just deciding if you want to even do anything else, but what's that challenge been like for you to kind of reshift things? Maybe it's been a very pleasant one.
Well, I would say it has been a pleasant one. I feel like flexibility is equal to money at this point in my life. As long as I can have flexibility to be able to do the different things I want to do, and the chamber's allowed me that. I think there's some trust factor. I have a really great boss in Erin Carney, and she knows if I'm not there for a few hours, I'm getting things done, and hopefully that the proof is in the pudding there. So it's been a wonderful marriage for me with the chamber. But I look back on it. I've traveled a lot, but I've traveled, as you well know from your days in athletics, to college towns, quick in, quick out. A lot of bus travel, a lot of plane travel. I haven't traveled enough with my wife and my family. I'd like to probably find some time before I get beyond that opportunity age-wise to really go kind of see the world rather than college campuses. Need to, I think as we all get older, we get wiser and we realize just how grateful we should be. I need to do more with my church and more with some of the 501c3s that I've been involved with, just because I feel like it's a good time for me to do that. I've got a little more time to give back, so I should do that.
How important, or not how important, but the importance of the chamber in a community. You've mentioned that you've been a part of it for a long, long time, and now you're on staff. But what is it that you try to sell to not only businesses, but just individuals about what is the importance of having this group, this organization that can do for businesses, but to elevate just the brand and awareness and of a city?
I think most communities that have a chamber, and there's over 9,000 in the United States right now, and the state with the most chambers is Texas. So Texans get it. I think just the overarching answer is it's what America wants. It wants connectivity. You want a business community that's vibrant, and you want a business community that's connected so that people can help move the entire business needle in the same direction, but also in that process, get more clients, get more customers, get more business. I think in Denton, what I've found, and I'm now on the older edge of it, the chamber thankfully does not look like me. It's much younger. It's much more diverse than it's ever been. I feel like a lot of these talented young men and women that are coming out of either UNT, TWU, or NCTC, they want to stay in Denton County. They're not looking to get away. So what we try to do is really keep our ears to the ground on what's it going to take to keep them here from an industry standpoint, what kind of opportunities need to be in Denton and Denton County to keep this younger vibe together. And I feel like the number one thing the chamber will do for you, if you get engaged with the chamber, it will allow you to build your own posse within the chamber. Some people will say, well, it's just a big club. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is a big club with a ton of little clubs underneath it. If you'll just get involved, you'll find your people. But you can't join, cut a check, get in our directory, and then hope that the chamber is going to create magic for you. What we're pretty good at, and I feel across the board, we're pretty good at saving you time meeting the person you needed to meet. And we give you the programming and the networking and the opportunities across 365 days out of the year where there's multiple chances for that to happen. So I look at our little Wake Up Wednesday that we started coming out of the pandemic. Can take no credit for what's happened. It was already in place when I got here. But the one thing that we did do coming out of the pandemic was we decided when you came to Wake Up Wednesday, you were going to get a number and we were going to put you in a breakout room. Because the only thing I got out of the times on the computer in the pandemic world on the Zooms was when it was a 4 or 5 person conversation and you actually got engaged. And I thought, well, let's steal from that. And so we started with 25, 30 people coming to Wake Up Wednesday, and we're routinely 150 to 200 now. You can get coffee anywhere, so it must be working. People are getting connections out of that, and it's simple, and it's not a big use of your time. And so those are the kind of things I try to sell is, it costs a little bit to get involved. It's never a money game with me. You can take the lowest membership and still get a lot of benefit, but you gotta get in the club, and then we'll help you any way we can.
And I've seen, because I'm pretty involved as well, I've seen that the membership has grown exponentially over the last number of years. I'll give you credit for that.
Well,
for sure.
I think I came in at buy low time, which is a good time to come in, right? Coming off a shutdown, I think I took advantage of a lot of people already anxious to join. But thank you.
And what are you seeing that you said there's a lot of levels, and there are a lot of levels that you can join at. What's the biggest attraction that a business or people says, yeah, I think I will join this club because I do see it? What do you think the hook is that's making people want to do this now?
Well, it's interesting because every business has a different purpose and a different mission. And so it's not a one-stop shop for all. We've got to figure out what it is you do and how we can, put you in a position to hopefully meet the people that will become your customers. But it's not so much that I introduced you to her, but that she introduced you to someone down there. It's getting involved and swimming around and really figuring out who people are. What I tell a smaller business person when he or she joins is, don't ever lose sight of the fact that we have really good big business partners in this town. We have banks, hospitals, car dealers that have been committed to the chamber for a long time, and they basically front the bill for all of our programming. If it wasn't for these bigger members who get it, understand, and want to be supportive, we wouldn't have what we have. But 80 to 85% of our membership is small to intermediate business. So it's not Texas Health Presby or Medical City. It's not Billiter Ford or American National Bank and Trust. It's smaller businesses, and so that $600, that $1,200, that membership, that's a big decision for them. And I don't take that lightly. That could be the difference in a part-time person. That could be the difference in insurance. So if they're making a commitment to us, even at one of our lower levels, they're our bread and butter. If we can make them happy and we can get them 2 or 3 customers, they've made their commitment back on their investment. And then if they're in for 2 or 3 years, renewals are not a problem. It's that one and done year where they didn't see anything out of it and they maybe look back at their financials and say, we just can't do this. Those are the hard ones to hold on to. And we're struggling with some of that now only because I think the economy has been quizzical at best. And so if you don't have much in the way of margins, that can be tough. But for the most part, a lot of business in Denton. So, there's more for me to do every day, no doubt. I don't need to take a day off. There's always people to call and people to try to get involved.
There's a lot of cities, I'm sure, across the country that have universities in there as part of a business structure. Here in Denton, you mentioned earlier, we have 2 large universities and also NCTC, North Central Texas. How do the universities play into it? As you mentioned, there's 80-85% membership at small businesses, but there's 2 of the largest employers in the city. How does a chamber see universities as part of the structure?
Well, we're in North Texas, so 13 counties that make up the North Texas region, which is bigger in terms of population than a lot of states in the United States. So the North Texas region is very, very popular. But if you talk about cities we would be in competition for maybe luring other big business or companies, you're talking about Southlake and Frisco and Carrollton and Plano and on down the line, all very attractive and very vibrant in their own right. Mm-hmm. We're different. We've got UNT, we've got TW, we've got NCTC. We are a higher ed capital. I mean, when you think about that many students, a lot of times you quickly think of Texas or Texas A&M or Michigan or whatever. When you combine the three schools here, we are an enormous college town, one of the biggest in the nation. We don't really look at ourselves that way, but we are. So the vibe in town reflects that. And I think it's why our downtown square is such an eclectic, really cool place that makes us a lot different than the people I just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't happen if you didn't have all of that higher education feel to it. The other thing that sets us apart is I-35. We're at the confluence of I-35. It's a connector of Canada to Mexico. So think of the millions of Americans that come by our city every year. And because of that, we have some great, big partners. Peterbilt's a great example. Trucking industry makes sense when you're sitting right by I-35 and you can get those trucks off and to where they need to go. So we're a very different community to promote. And I think it's those two things. Our location can't be beat. There's not many cities in America that can boast what we have in terms of that sort of access, and a really, really vibrant and productive airport that a lot of people don't really consider, but they should. And then the three schools. So, I mean, we're a pretty cool place to be able to talk about and position. And I think that we just got to be careful how we grow.
Back to broadcasting for a minute, sports broadcasting. We're at a time, as you mentioned just a minute ago, the football program at the University of North Texas, nationally ranked, first time in a long time at this level. But as a broadcaster, Hank, you've seen 30 years of some pretty bad football, some pretty bad basketball. The program is now doing well. Texas Women's University has a good program. But over your career, and I was there at one time as well, you feel like you can become part of that program. So how does it feel for you as kind of a professional, but also a fan, to see this kind of success that especially the University of North Texas might be having right now on a national level?
Well, really proud of the people in the department. I'm not as close to all of them as I was, but I understand the battle. And to get that first sellout was huge. I mean, it takes a lot of work to get that done in this town. We talked about eclectic and cultural and all that. Yeah. It also makes it hard to get just the sports-minded person to come, because we got a lot of folks that are more interested in art and music, and that's great. Mm-hmm. But that didn't make it easy in terms of trying to get them to a football game, and that's the student base and the town in a lot of regards. So the sellout was huge, and I think it opened some eyes to people that hadn't been, that, wow, this is a fantastic stadium, and this is a great product, and they do so many great things in and around the game. So I hope that will continue. But it's been a magical football season. I mean, as we record this, sitting on 10 wins, I've never had 10 wins before Thanksgiving. I've never had 10 wins in 31 years of Mean Green football. And that includes some good seasons. But Eric Morris was the right man for the right times at North Texas as we began this big pivot of roster turnover and having to pay players and having to negotiate all that. I can't imagine that North Texas could have had a better man at the helm. Truly have a lot of respect for him. And just the way he coaches these guys, 2 years ago, 75 new players. This year, 68 new players. That's not easy. Mm-hmm. But to get them to buy in and be as cohesive as they've been, and to put the kind of numbers up on both sides of the ball. I mean, the offense has been good the whole time. Yeah. The defense is now allowing what everyone likes the phrase they like, complementary football. Well, it's as complementary as it can get for North Texas, because the defense turns people over. They do it in the red zone. The Mean Green has an unbelievable freshman quarterback and unbelievable freshman running back, and they're going to find a way to score in that red zone. I think we're at like 95%. Mm-hmm. So things that hadn't happened in the past, defense and red zone scoring, check that box, and then just all over the field when it's an open field. Who do you want calling plays? I'll take Eric Morris.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Of course, it'd be hard to keep him. We'll see about how that develops here in a few weeks. Okay, now back to your teacher hat. When you look at your career, sports communications, teaching Bill Mercer's class, so you're teaching young students, and you're in intercollegiate athletics now in a big networking role with director of membership for the chamber. But all of that to me looks like incredible flexibility in a career, willing to make different moves and different things. Is that a message you try to pass on to young people that are either in Bill's class or that you just are associated with through the university, that when you're looking at a career, you could just say, hey, look at mine, be available to do something because you might want to pivot and do something completely different, which you have done here late in your career?
Well, I think the good news for me, the chamber segue was pretty natural because of all the business development and sponsorship stuff I had done at the athletic department. I already had some good friends in the business community, so I was in a good position there, better than probably somebody coming in from scratch that would have to learn all the personalities. So that was good, and I appreciate, again, just everything I was able to learn at North Texas put me in a position to be able to do what I was doing with the chamber. But yeah, I think when it gets back to advice to the kids, learn as much as you can about as much as you can around what it is you want to do. So, for instance, if you want to be a radio play-by-play announcer, then shadow somebody and watch them in the booth. Get close to Dave Barnett and ask him some questions after the game. But also figure out what the engineer is doing, because maybe that's your ticket to get in here. Maybe you could produce this and make sure it gets on the air and take care of all the sponsor satisfactions. Or go be a board op and actually listen to the entire broadcast and understand your role is to play the ads, make sure the announcer knows when he's coming off the air, coming back on the air, and kill his mic during the ad so he doesn't say anything stupid that goes out over the air, which, by the way,
not that that's ever happened.
I don't know how I've been able to not have anything I said between timeouts go over the air. A lot of good board ops. But, I mentioned Matt Sizik, or Mike Marshall, these young people I've seen come up through the production side. They learned how to do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So they know how to use a camera, but they also know how to edit what was taken with the camera.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing is figure out where it is where that light bulb went off where you said, I think I'd like to do that. Well, learn how to do that, but learn how to do the things that touch that. Even if you're not great at them, you'll have a better appreciation for the team you're going to be with. Mm-hmm. And, one of our friends who I think is at the peak at this is Mark Followell. Mark has done radio, Mark has done TV. But if you ask any of the people on the production crew for the Mavs, they're going to tell you they love Mark because Mark knows what everybody does. And he does it in a nice way. And that to me creates so much better working relationships and values when you have a true appreciation for the people that are contributing to what you're trying to get done. Because if you don't, you're kind of on an island that could get shut off at some point.
You're at a point now, Hank, life-work balance. You mentioned that it was a great, attractive opportunity to go to the chamber because it is a grueling road in athletics, as we know. What's ahead for you? How, as long as you're enjoying this, I'm sure you'll keep doing it. But have you got any kind of thing that you would like to accomplish beyond what you're doing right now?
Well, I mean, it would be great to put a college football playoff broadcast on my resume. So I'm very hopeful that could happen. But no, I mean, it's kind of steady as she goes. I moved my mom down to Texas about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So she lives here in Denton with us, and it's great to have her here. I kind of just want to politely kind of start coming off a few things that I've been doing, extracurricular, so I can have a little more time with her. And got 2 grandkids now. You know how that goes. Time with them is time that, there's no guarantees how much you get of that. So you have to make more time for it. And I got to do a better job at making more time for that. I've got some great friends that always want to get me involved in something else. And I'm kind of like, I think I'm at a point now where I'm going to start kind of sliding off a few boards and committees. But the ones I'm on right now, I remain committed to. I just don't want to take on anything new, I guess. But yeah, beyond that, I do feel remarkably blessed. Just had a great run at North Texas, and happy to see that athletic department succeeding in all the areas they are. Things won't stay the same like they did for me because it's a fast-changing business right now. That doesn't appeal to me as much, but I'm just happy to kind of be just loosely involved where I am, and I think more of the same, hopefully for the next few years.
Well, you're doing a great job. Again, Hank Dickenson, Director of Membership for the Denton Chamber of Commerce, a longtime voice on the University of North Texas Radio Network, has been our guest today. Hank, thank you so much for joining and being on the show.
Well, it's a fascinating show. You do an awesome job with it, and thank you for including me.
Thanks, Hank. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Built for This. Be sure to follow Built for This on your favorite listening platform and share it with a friend. Join me on the next episode when I will share entertaining stories of inspiration, encouragement, and purpose-driven experiences. What are you built for? Built for This is produced and recorded by Heart Media DFW.